your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Looking for Mr. or Mrs. Right, as the case may be? Well, today we're going to help you in your relationships, not only help you to find Mr. or Mrs. Right, but hang on to them or avoid Mr. or Mrs. Wrong here on Tell Me Your Story. My guest, Dr. Debra Mandel. And we're going to be talking in particular about the book she's most recently written called Dump That Chump. Yes, indeed. From Doormat to Diva in only 9 steps. We'll find out all about that next.
Walk with me, talk with me, tell me your stories. I'll do my best to understand you. Oh, won't you walk with me?
And it's Tell Me Your Story, and I thank you for joining us as we look into your relationships. Maybe not with a crystal ball, cards, or just intuition, but with someone who can help you through the rough spots. My guest is author, speaker, and columnist Dr. Debra Mandel, a recognized and respected psychologist with 20-plus years' experience specializing in helping individuals and couples with relationship struggles, depression, anxiety, stress, child mistreatment, eating disorders, addictions, and general life concerns. Dr. Mandel, thank you for joining us on the program.
Hey, Richard, thanks for having me. I always love chatting with you. You're the best.
Well, thank you. I enjoy talking with you as well, and hearing about your exploits as you traverse the globe, appearing on various programs. You are all over the country from time to time talking with folks about themselves and their significant others, as well as their siblings and their children. And it is not an easy thing in this world, in this day and age. I mean, you and I both probably would think back to when we were kids growing up and how life was, and, of course, as the saying goes, and I, of course, never thought I'd hear myself saying, well, I remember the good old days, and boy, they were good. But they were, and we had a lot of fun. And nowadays, it's so much different. But, of course, it was different for our parents and their parents and so forth. What are some of the major challenges that we as individuals face that we maybe haven't before in maybe incorporating technology in finding that special someone, because there are so many concerns?
Yes, and I want to comment on something that you just said, though, for parents out there who are dealing with their kids, and even if some teenagers are listening right now, to know that what you just said is our parents have been through it too. So these changes that we go through now, we sometimes think that we're in this little vacuum, that no one else has ever been through them. And while there are different challenges and different changes, the process of dealing with things that are new and something you don't understand is across every generation. So it's always a good grounding force for me as a parent when I think of, you know what, I guess I put my parents through this too. And it's good to hold on to that.
Well, I know that I can hear the kids saying, yeah, it was different, and they had it easy, this, that, and the other thing. Of course, then you hear from the parents, yeah, well, I walked to school uphill in the snow both ways kind of thing,
Exactly. Every generation has its own challenges, and these are some of the ones that we're facing right now, is how do you meet that special someone? In our day, and I think we're probably of fairly similar age. We won't date ourselves here, but we're certainly older than teenagers and past our 20s. And when we think about what it was like to meet somebody, you meet somebody in college, or you meet somebody, you go to the local pub with your friends and you hang out and you're having a couple drinks and you meet that guy, because that's kind of the way it was then. Or we meet somebody in the workplace, but now we have all these taboos against fraternizing with our coworkers in the workplace. We have all this fear of sexual harassment. We have all this stuff going on that makes our meeting somebody, especially once we're past our college years, very difficult to do.
Well, I walk through the workplace with blinders on and earplugs, so I can neither hear nor see. I use a cane to get to where I need to go and feel my way through my job. And that way I avoid all of that, and it just makes life that much more difficult.
Yeah.
Because bottom line is we can't go through life like that. We do have to keep our eyes and our ears open, because you don't know if you may walk right past Mr. or Mrs. Right.
That's right. So we do have to think about all the available resources. And a lot of people that I see in my practice, a lot of people who are becoming single again or who have never been married, and I mention things like, well, there's online resources and stuff, and they go, oh, no, that's just for creeps and for losers. And I say, no, that's not true. In fact, a lot of people meet their Mr. Right or Mrs. Right, Miss Right, I guess. Yeah, not Mrs. Right. That wouldn't be good, huh? They meet them. Yeah, if you're meeting Mrs. Right, we've got a whole other conversation going on. Yes. However, people do meet people that way, and it's perfectly acceptable, because, again, our technology and our transformations in this generation have led us to be more isolative in certain ways, where we're not necessarily out there meeting people. A lot of people even work from home. They don't even see a lot of people during the day. So it's important to say, you know what, whatever resources are out there, I'm going to try them. That doesn't mean that we don't need to be cautious, right? I mean, if you're going to do an online type of dating service or a matchmaking service, you have to be very particular and very clever about making sure that who you're meeting is a legitimate person and not just a con artist. And, again, that's another conversation, but there's all kinds of tips and tools that we have to help people make sure that they're not getting themselves in trouble. For instance, you would never make a first date with somebody that you met online, not in a public place. You don't decide to have them come pick you up. Instead, you meet them somewhere where you're going to have coffee, you tell a best friend where you're going, and you're available by your cell phone. So basically, people know where you are and who you're with, and it's not that dangerous.
Well, there was a story just in the news the other day about a young kid on the subway, and I think it was New York, and he saw this gal from across the subway and just was so taken by her. She was just, there was something that just clicked in him that just fascinated him about her. He went to muster up the courage to go talk to her, and by the time he did so, she was gone. So he put this website up, and he said, I'm looking for this girl, and all he could do is put up a sketch. Well, apparently one of her friends saw the website, saw the sketch, called her, actually called him and said, I think I know who you're looking for. And then they've connected, and apparently it was an instantaneous thing. So it can happen just about anywhere.
Oh, I'm so glad that had a happy ending. I was afraid that you were going to tell me that he turned out to be a stalker and he killed her. I'm so glad that the other was true. But, that's the kind of thing that it can be amazing, but you also have to be careful about somebody who is that obsessed with someone they've just seen as a vision and haven't even met, because that's a good thing for us to talk about, is the power of immediate projection that we do in relationships, which is why so many people can either have a great experience or a terrible experience after 3 or 4 months in a relationship, is because when you first meet somebody, it's not really truly reality-based. That's Cupid's arrow flying through each other, chemistry calls, and it's very powerful, but it doesn't necessarily mean that who you're attracted to is who you're signing up with.
Well, I know that signing on and off the Internet, just doing regular business is tough enough, but when you're doing that kind of thing, trying to find a relationship, I mean, some say that whether it's on the subway or at a party, across a crowded room, or on the Internet, you're rolling the dice, and in most cases with the Internet, some people feel, as you kind of commented earlier, it's not just rolling the dice, you're actually spinning the roulette wheel. and you may come up black, and that's not necessarily a good thing, so you do have to be careful. What we want to do is kind of focus on the things that we can do to hone in on that Mr. Right. Dr. Debra Mandel is my guest. She's the author of the current book, Dump That Chump. I don't know why I have trouble with that title. It just, Dump That Chump, as opposed to Attract That Attractive or something.
Okay. Well,
where'd that come from?
Well, okay, do you want to know what the original title was? You're probably going to hate that one more.
What was that? What was the original title?
It was called Chuck That Schmuck. Yes, but you know what though? The subtitle tells it all. It is called Dump That Chump, From Doormat to Diva in Only 9 Steps, A Guide to Getting Over Mr. Wrong. And the entire premise of it is how to find Mr. Right by clearing out the old baggage. And one of the reasons that we don't often write very positive types of titles, and you know what? I'm all about that. You know, my first book was Healing the Sensitive Heart.
Yeah.
Second book was Your Boss Is Not Your Mother. I'm all about positive titles. The problem is that really people get more attracted to titles that really yank them. They say, whoa, what's that? And so, you know, we kind of go for the sell, and then it's the substance inside that tells it all. And the way that I wrote this book, which I know that you've read it, is that I talk very compassionately, but also with a no-nonsense approach that let women know, but also men, if they're interested, because they may be with a chumpette. That's clearly possible.
Okay.
I've worked with lots of men who are in bad relationships.
Indeed,
yes, although men don't tend to buy self-help books. But guys out there, as you're listening, go ahead. Pull it out. Either get it for yourself or get it for your best friend, because you know what? We both, men and women, have problems with relationships. But anyway, so that's the story about the title. It's really about getting people, catching their attention, and then you know that inside the book, from front cover to back cover, there's a whole lot of really wonderful things that you can learn about yourself, about how you approach relationships, and how to approach them better so you're not finding yourself in that situation where you're really with a guy and you're staying in a dead-end relationship, where you're with a gal who doesn't treat you well, and you look at them and you say, why am I here and why do I stay?
Yeah. Well, and on the cover, I love it when I get these books and I look at them. I'm always intrigued by if they're actually photographs, because here's somebody who has chosen to have their image emblazoned on the front cover of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies of your book, seen everywhere. I'm hoping either this person's a hermit and isn't looking for love anywhere, or has already found love and it's okay with him or her. Who is this individual?
Do you love this picture? It's so great. They've got like red glasses on them and devil's horns and a red beard. It's hysterical with the arrows pointed to him. Everybody, you've got to go online and check this out. Dump That Chump. Because just the cover alone is fantastic. I take no credit for the cover, but when I did turn the back, when I got the cover image, and I'm like, I love this book. It's great. It's mine. I'm so excited. And then I looked behind, and it is a self-portrait of a guy. His name is Michael. I have not actually talked to my editor about this, but my hunch is that he works at HarperCollins probably, and he said, I'll do it. Why not? He'll probably be famous. Like every girl in the universe is going to say, I want that guy. Any guy who would be willing to put his picture on the cover of a book with that image is fantastic. So, you know, you never know what people are thinking. It's great, though.
Exactly. And we're going to talk more about the 9 steps and how you can find the right person, or if you are wanting to dump that chump or chumpette, and you want to do it in a positive and or a clean way, because that's very important. You just don't say, you know, I'm out of here. I don't want to be with you anymore. Goodbye. You know, the other person also has feelings too. And you don't have to stay with the person. I mean, I think that's one of the keys that maybe we need to discuss, is the fact that people feel as though I'm in a relationship with this person, and maybe they've even moved in together. Okay, they're not married. There's no heavy commitment, engagement, et cetera, et cetera. But they feel like they're kind of trapped. And so they just kind of hunker down and say, this is the way it's going to be for a long time to come. They don't have to stay, do they?
No, they don't. And that is really the key for a lot of people, is that once we have put that commitment out there, we sometimes feel obligated toward it, which is a good idea. I mean, clearly, I am very much pro-responsibility and commitment and loyalty. But if you really are facing a relationship where it's not working for you, and I want to be really clear what the difference is between a chump and a good guy. There's many good guys or good gals that we're with, and we decide we don't want this relationship for various reasons, such as we've discovered that we're really not compatible. This is a great person. In fact, I spent years with a guy who I adore, and we're great friends, and he's married now. But he really didn't want to be a stepdad, and I have a daughter, and she's awesome and wonderful. But we had all these years together, and he really didn't want that role in any way. Even though my daughter has a great dad who's very available in her life, he still would have had to play a part in her life that way, and he didn't want it. And I had to finally say, you know what? My daughter's really important to me. I can't be with a guy who isn't willing to step up to the plate and take on that role. And so I had to let him go, and he was a good guy. He wasn't a chump. Versus the guy I spent 7 years on and off with in my 20s, who was the total epitome of chumpness. And in fact, I actually talk about him a little bit in the book without naming his name, and I doubt that he'll ever read the book, so he probably won't sue me for slander. And I don't say anything bad about him, but the reality is that I went back and forth with a guy who didn't really care about me at all. He was so self-absorbed. I was so in love with him because I was completely attracted to him, but there was nothing good about it. And we went back and forth, and I was being used, and I finally had to say goodbye. And there was no explanation needed anymore because, you know what? I had given him 27 explanations over the course of the relationship why it wasn't working for me and what I needed to make it better. And when I finally said goodbye, it was just that, goodbye. I didn't really need to spend a lot of time dealing with his feelings because he didn't care about mine. And that's kind of the key. The difference between dumping a chump and dumping a good guy, or letting go of a good guy, I should say, is very different.
Well, and of course, letting go or walking away from or dumping a male versus a female is the same?
In many ways it is. Again, it depends on the person that you're letting go of. If you're really letting go of a chump or a chumpette, I supply three main ways to do that. There's the best form is a face-to-face where you say, you know what, it really isn't working out for me and it's time to let go. The second is possibly an email or a text message because you've already had that conversation and he wasn't listening or she wasn't listening anyway. And the third method, the most extreme, of course, if you don't have kids or financial entanglements or things like that, is to the Houdini method. Bye-bye. I disappear. We're over.
Okay.
You know, get rid of, sometimes people dwell on, oh my gosh, I've got 4 items at his house I have to get back. Think about it. In 6 months, are you going to miss those items? Unless it was the pearls from your grandma that was left to you, sometimes it's better to just cut your losses and move on.
We're talking with Dr. Debra Mandel, author of Dump That Chump and other books as well. As she has a website that you can go to check out not only the books, but other information, some news videos as well. And that is Dr. Debra Online. That's DrDebraOnline.com or DrDebraOnline.com. We're talking about relationships, your relationships, and you might be asking yourself, well, how does this play into new paradigms for a new world? Well, think about it. You're going into new relationships all the time, especially if you're changing jobs, you're changing neighborhoods, you're moving from one part of the country to the other. You're changing relationships. And, of course, when you're talking about dumping the chump, of course, Deborah, we're talking more about the more intimate one-on-one relationships. The dumping of the other types, the other levels, I'll call them the associates, is probably a little easier. But there are concerns that people have. I don't want to dwell too much on it because I'd like to dwell on attracting or finding that the person that you can connect with, who does care about you, that does want to see you succeed and has your best interests at heart, and so forth. But in the process, isn't there a concern in this day and age in sort of creating, through the dumping process, a stalker of sorts? I mean, we've read the stories. We've seen them on the news where the relationship ended, but one of the parties said, no, it's not over, and they just won't let go.
Oh, yeah.
I know that's an extreme.
That is a huge concern for a lot of people because really when you think about chumps, a lot of the chumps are abusive, and I'm not necessarily directing my writings toward the people who are abusive, but clearly all abusers are also chumps. All chumps are not abusers, but all abusers are definitely chumps of the highest order. They rank, I have an assessment on the in the book about Are You With a Chump, where you can take it to actually assess yourself or the person that you're with. And if you're ranking in that 75 to 100 range, boy, you've got to really be concerned. If you've got a guy or a gal who's in that range where you're looking at them and you know that they are abusive, they're hurting you, they might be beating you, they're making you do sexual acts you don't want to do, those kinds of things, that could be very scary. That's a whole different set of advice about how to just at the foundation get rid of someone like that, because they can be scary. Stalkers are real. They're out there, and they won't let go. And there's a lot of things that you have to do. The number one thing is to find out what a stalker is, understand that mentality, and make sure that you don't make the common mistake that many people do, which is to engage in the stalker's behavior and keep reinviting them in.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people will ask you, as a psychologist and a counselor, for advice. But I would venture that most people don't usually check into the therapist or counselor's credentials. And I'm not actually necessarily wanting you to go through all of your schooling, but they also want to know, well, so how is this person doing in their relationship? They're trying to help me with mine, and you have shared a little bit of that. You have already gone into that. Is that a good tactic? So that it's like, okay, yes, I've been where you are, so I am speaking from experience kind of therapy and counseling?
Well, I personally, I'm a little biased here because I came from a very screwed up background and have had a lot of issues myself, from eating disorders and depression and anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder and all that, as well as having professional training in healing people with those issues, as well as healing myself. So I have a full range, and I'm a little biased thinking that it's really better to see a therapist who's been around the block, because if you're basically seeing somebody who's had a white bread type of life, then, they're really not going to get it on that really deep emotional level. But you also want to make sure that you're with somebody, that you're seeing somebody who at least has it together in the office. You don't want to go see a counselor who sits there and tells you all of their problems. While you're there, self-disclosure is important to a certain extent. When you're dealing with people who are coming to you for advice, you want to share a little bit so that they understand that you've been there, you understand, but you don't want to give so much away that it feels for the client as though they're there to heal you.
Right.
And credentials, though, let me say something about that, because that is really important. There are a lot of people out there right now who call themselves life coaches, and nothing against life coaches or relationship coaches, but a lot of them really don't have any background or training at all in psychology. They basically went through a brief certification program that allows themselves to call themselves a coach. And if you're struggling with some important, maybe more serious issues, that's really not the kind of person that you want to go put your heart invested in, because they're really not going to have the background and training. You really do want somebody who's licensed in the area of either clinical social work or a master's and a license in psychology, or like myself, I have a doctorate and a license as a psychologist.
How valuable and important is it for an individual to maybe seek out some of these self-help books and videos and DVDs and different programs and go through sort of a self-help, self-healing kind of process? Is that, have you seen that working where they don't, I don't want to sit in an office or someplace on a couch or a chair, whatever, in a therapist's office and spill my guts to somebody else. I really don't want to go through that. It just is very uncomfortable for me. So I'm going to go ahead and get the books and the videos and so forth. Any results, positive results from that kind of self-therapy?
I think that self-help has a great potential for people if they actually put into effect the advice that's given in the books. What happens is a lot of people read the books. They want the cure-all. They want to feel better right away. They want the magic from reading, and that's not usually what happens. For instance, even in my book, Dump That Chump, I have probably, if I subtotaled all of them, there's probably 30 or 40 actual exercises that I advise people to do to get through that process of feeling better. Now, if somebody just reads the book from cover to cover and then they just put it down and they never do anything with it, probably isn't going to be very helpful. If you actually do the exercises and put them into reality effect, then you're probably going to feel better. And that's, I would say, true of most self-help books. It's not just easy reading. It's really a therapy process in writing. And if you put it into effect, you can do a lot with that. Now, some people need a coach or a guide, somebody who can help them and need that structure once a week or twice a week or once a month with somebody that they sit with and go through the process with, which would be seeking a counselor or a therapist, which has incredible value. But, everybody can't afford that, and self-help is a great way to deal with a lot of issues as long, again, as you deal with those issues by putting those things into action.
Transforming self-downers into self-uppers. It's sort of along those kinds of, that kind of a line after you've dumped the chump, which is, by the way, step 1 of 9, folks. The first step is the title of the book. By Dr. Debra Mandel here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm sure that Deborah could at least give you some insight and a little guidance and direction so that if you are feeling like you're stuck, one of the things that I learned very not that long ago was I was tired of settling. And that's what a lot of people do, don't they? I mean, in just about everything, they settle for this, they settle for that, instead of settling for what they really want.
Exactly, and that's what that whole step is about, what you just named, transforming self-downers into self-uppers, is that people have a lot of beliefs in their minds that are really, they're cockamamie. They don't work. They're just ridiculous, and some of the ones that I mentioned in the book are, he's the only guy for me, or no one will ever love me like he does. I will never again have the kind of chemistry I have with him, and please, guys out there, substitute that for her. It's the same process. Or if he or she doesn't want me, no one ever will. These are these beliefs that we swirl around in our heads that just keep us stuck. We get fear-based then, and what we do is that we stay present in a relationship that isn't working for us because we're too darn afraid to move on. And granted, I am very compassionate in this book and in my life about how hard it is to leave certain relationships. Sometimes people are very intertwined financially or with kids. They've gone a long way with somebody and they really realize it's not working, but it is hard to get out. So this is that's why I didn't put a timeline on this. I didn't want people to think, oh, it's only 9 weeks or it's 9 days or anything like that. It's 9 steps, which means you do that at your pace. But I did want to dispel of that myth that says that it takes half the length of the relationship that you're in order to get over it. That's just baloney. It does not have to take that long. When you really recognize that you're in a bad relationship, you need to get out, your grieving process can be very short, and it can be very easy to move forward into rehabilitating yourself so that you're able to find the right guy or gal.
Yeah, and some people will come up to you and say after 5 or 6 or 7 months of your feeling the way that you do about the situation, will you just get over it? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily. Everybody goes through the grieving process because it is the end of something. It's the death of a relationship.
Yes, and that can be so incredibly painful for people. But I do want people to understand that sometimes, it's really different. If you are losing, let's say that your parent gave you an heirloom and you lost that. And then you were really upset about that because this was something that was precious that you lost. That would be worthy of a grieving process that's intense, right? Because that's precious. Or if you have the death of a child or the death of a spouse you've been with forever who is wonderful to you. These are different kinds of grieving experiences versus if you recognize, I've been with a guy or a gal who's disrespected me, doesn't care about my needs, doesn't treat me well, possibly even abusive. That's like letting go of a bad flu. We don't sit around and pine for the loss of a flu when we're feeling better, right?
Yeah.
So that's I really want to make that distinction about what grieving should be about is when you really lose something precious. But when you're really losing something that's not that precious at all, possibly even toxic, then you have to rethink this idea of how long should it take me to get over this? Maybe I'm pining. That's a whole other chapter in the book. Stop pining, romanticizing, and fantasizing about the chump that you just dumped or who just jumped you. Yeah. Because the reality is, it's not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And there are 2 related steps that I was just looking at. And I'm not sure. I'm feeling as though one of them, first of all, is accepting your own screw-ups. And after you've done that, then you might want to go ahead and do step number 5, which is giving yourself some loving. Because you've just been through a rough time, and you don't want to keep beating yourself up. Okay, yes, you did choose this person. Yes, you did make all those decisions, and you put yourself in that situation. That is true. That is the reality of it. However, If you've dumped the chump, step 1, then you pat yourself on the back and say, hey, I've begun the step to healing myself and heading towards a healthy relationship.
Absolutely, and let's take those one at a time because they're both very, very important. Accepting your own screw-ups, I write it that way because I really want to make it so that it's not shame-based. You know, people think about, oh my God, I was so bad, I did this to myself, I'm horrible, and then they just stay mired in this agony and pain and beating themselves up with a hammer at their head, putting themselves down, and very likely then to meet another guy or gal who's going to mistreat them because they're not good to themselves. So accepting your screw-ups allows you to say, hey, wait a minute here, I was a participant in this relationship, even if my participation was very small in terms of its negativity, it's important to recognize that. One of the examples I give in the book that I think is very powerful is that so many women walk into relationships not wanting to tell the guy who they really are. For instance, maybe I'm a fairly, you know me, you know, I speak my mind, right? If I walk into a relationship and I act like I'm Miss Passive Girl, I'm in trouble because I'm likely to meet guys, and I've done this in the past. I've censored myself and I've repressed myself because I didn't want a guy to know how outspoken I was because I thought it would scare him away. So lo and behold, I end up with a guy who likes that I'm passive and I don't have an opinion myself. 3 or 4 months into the relationship, I do have an opinion. I speak it, and he's befuddled. He's bewildered. Why are you speaking up? Who are you? What do you have to say? You know, it's because I have distorted my image of myself in order to land this guy or keep this guy because I feared that maybe he wouldn't like me if I was not, if I was too outspoken. But then that's really deceiving and betraying myself.
Yeah.
So that is something that's a common mistake that women do, is that they end up going into relationships with people where they don't acknowledge who they really are. Then the guy actually thinks that they're different than who they are, and he feels betrayed later on. Like, who are you? What do you? Where? You know, it could be the opposite.
Where'd the girl that I met 6 months ago? Where'd she go?
And that's what I mean by accepting your own screw-ups, because that's not his fault. That is not his fault if he does not want the package that he sees in front of him because he didn't sign up for that. In the same way, if we meet a guy who ends up looking very different to us in 3 or 6 months because he actually put on an act in order to land us, that doesn't feel good. So women have to also take responsibility, or anybody who's entering into a relationship has to take responsibility for what are you putting out there that might be deceiving to the person that you're going to be with, and make sure that you don't do that. So that may be one of the things that people have to accept in terms of their screw-ups when they leave a relationship, is to say, oh, you know what? I don't think I really presented myself accurately. That might be a big one. And then, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and it's kind of hard to go back after the fact and say, by the way, I left out some critical details about myself and who I am. Because then now you've opened up a whole can of worms as regarding the whole trust issue.
Exactly. It's hard, but you know what? The sooner the better. Because if you have held something back, or you've not told somebody something because you were afraid at the onset that they wouldn't like you for that, the sooner that you disclose that, the better. Because they're going to find out eventually. Some friend is going to say something, or you're going to get an email from somebody that someone's going to see. Something is going to happen where it's going to come out, and that's when you really look bad, because it really makes you seem like you have secretly been keeping something, and you've known about it, and you've been withholding it, and that's worse than ever. But if you're in a relationship 3, 6 months, 8 months, a year, and you say, oh my gosh, I never told my partner this, I better fess up, better to do it then than to wait 10 years down the line when that big betrayal comes around.
I have to chuckle because I work for a local TV station, and the shift that I have there is that I work is during the time of the soap operas. And it's a rather interesting time because that's all the soap operas are about, is withholding information until it's suddenly revealed through some other means that is not the best. And it just, and of course that's what creates the conflicts that make people watch these programs. But I just have to chuckle thinking, man, these people, they're acting out all of this stuff that we shouldn't be doing. You know, do not do this at home.
Exactly. The best advice I can impart based on your story right there is soap operas are fun to watch. Don't use them as a role model of how you should be in a relationship. They're horrible. Terrible. But, exactly. It creates the drama, and people love to watch drama, but don't create that in your own life because it's only going to create heartache and agony. But you did mention this, giving yourself some self-loving, and I didn't cover that part, which is so incredibly important, equally as important as accepting your own screw-ups, because, again, that's what a lot of people end up sadly using relationships for, is they find somebody who's going to fulfill or fill up certain emotional holes that they have in their own self. You know, low self-esteem, feeling bad about yourself, emotional wounds from childhood, blah, 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 the list goes on and on. We take those, we're not healed that way. We seek out a relationship partner who's going to either parent us or mother us or treat us in ways that we didn't get treated as a child, and we are expecting way too much of them. And then we don't know how to treat our own selves with kindness and love. And that's so important for people when you leave a relationship, is to spend some time not dating, not going out there and finding somebody new, but actually learning how to give yourself the nourishment emotionally and physically that you need to be able to sustain for yourself, so that you're seeking a partner who's a bonus pack, but not the actual main substance.
Have you ever come across a situation, a relationship, where the individuals, one of them is the chump, and the chump actually is willing to change and starts to make those changes to become a better person for themselves first and then for the relationship, and the relationship is sustained?
You're so funny, because you actually just named what I hope will be my next book, is Can the Chump Actually Change?
Chump change.
Chump
I like
change.
that.
You love that? It's great.
Now, I like that. That's a good title.
Chump change. Yes. Okay. This is fantastic. It's what this is all about. Can the chump actually change? You know what? It depends on the chump. The definition of a chump is basically somebody who is not interested in changing, who points the finger at you, who blames you for the failures in the relationship, and who generally makes you feel bad about yourself. That's
but it's true. It's your fault, not mine.
Exactly. And you know, we all know those kind of people. We've all either been with them or we have a friend who's with someone like that. They're just difficult people. They're not people who take an honest assessment of themselves or feel remorse about something they've done. They may feel sorry for a minute, or they may plead with you when you're walking out the door, please don't leave me, I'll change, and then they never do. But there is a subsection of chumps who I would consider the lower level, the low end chumps, not I should rephrase that, not the low end as in bad, but I mean the ones who actually have a lower level of chumpiness,
okay,
as opposed to the toxicity level, which is that 75 to 100 points when you take that test. Are you with a chump? Which, by the way, is on my website as well. So when you're assessing the person you're with, how chumpy they are, I think that there are chumps out there who can change if they really get it. You know, if they really find a moment where they say, oh my gosh, I'm losing a great person in my life, and it's because of me, at least in part, and I have to do something about that, and I'm willing to make changes, that's a good start. And I have, you know, by and large, I work with tons of couples. They come to me, and one person's probably a little worse than the other one, even though I don't necessarily admit that in the session at the first time. But I will tell somebody after a couple sessions, you know, hey, buddy, you know, you keep doing this, you're going to lose her. Or, hey, lady, come on, think about this. What are you doing here? Because, you know what, you keep doing this with him, he's going to walk out that door. Do you really want to lose this relationship over that? Yeah. And can we fix that? And then you see some people who say, you know what, I really do. I realize that I've had 14 failed relationships in my life, and it's all because the same person, each person told me the same thing, which is, you know, you don't listen to me. You're a lousy listener. Or you don't have any respect for my feelings. And they hear those things over and over again. Finally it clicks and they say, oh, maybe it is me.
Yeah, and it's funny because you hear the stories of the people who've been married and divorced multiple times, and it's never their fault. It's like, okay, that's fine. Thank you for dropping by. We'll see you around. Speaking of phone calls, we're going to go to our phone call. We actually have Chuck on the line who has a question for you regarding past relationships. Chuck, go ahead.
Hello there, Dr. Deborah. Well, that's exactly the topic that you were just talking about is what I wanted to ask about, because I was in a relationship that went on for 30 years almost, and now tragically after many, many years of counseling and trying to work it out, we've just decided, well, we can't work it out. But for me personally, I felt I had taken a lot of time to say, okay, what's the matter with me? If this relationship's going to improve, you know, change the guy in the mirror, and make an effort to change, and I definitely don't feel like I was in the right all the time, because I certainly had many, many mistakes, but the question I'm asking is, how do you sort out, what is your responsibility and what is the other person's responsibility? I always believe that it takes two to tango, and I sometimes feel like I over-focused on my missteps, if you will, but also sometimes think that I just wasn't honored with somebody else willing to say, maybe I made some mistakes. Do you know what I'm saying? How do you sort out what's your responsibility and what's not?
It's a great question, but first I have to say, Chuck, he's single. Ladies out there, he sounds like a great guy.
Well, I'm in a new and very, very committed relationship, which is wonderful.
Well, then please
withdraw that offer on my behalf.
Okay, so you're off limits. But you know what? You know why you're in another relationship, a committed and good relationship? Because you did just that. You took responsibility for your part, and yet that's the key. And it is very difficult sometimes to sort out when you're with somebody who wants to blame you for everything or doesn't want to look at their own responsibility. You have to really develop a lot of inner strength to be able to say, look, I will take responsibility for this, but the fact that you are constantly deceiving me or the fact that you're cheating on me or the fact that you're doing this, this, and this, that's your problem. It's not mine. And you can't walk away owning that part or else, you're going to feel like a victim. And the reality is you have to just say, I will take responsibility for this because I don't want to repeat that in the next relationship. And I want to have a good one, and that's the key. I mean, that's such a big, important part of it, and I'm so glad that you were willing to do that. And look, see, now you have a fantastic relationship.
Well, that's true, I do, and but I think the wounding that I feel like I took in this relationship that really ended many years ago, but has led to a separation 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago. There's still almost a bad habit that I got in of looking deep within myself, which is almost a bad habit that I have all on my own, is like, okay, what am I going to do? How do I fix this? What do I do to make this better? And so the habit is almost a lifelong habit, which my relationship worsened, of saying, I'm no good. I have to look in myself to fix myself before I can be in a good relationship. So to get to a stronger place where I say I think I am okay, that's the struggle for me.
So Chuck, let's reframe that, okay? Because this is really important. When we do what is good to do in a bad relationship, we often leave that relationship thinking that what we were doing wasn't good. In other words, self-assessment is a very good thing. It's not always the best thing in a relationship where somebody is going to stick your nose in it or not take their own responsibility, because then all of a sudden you are bearing the burden of the entire relationship. That's when it feels like it's self-abuse. When you move into a relationship where both people are doing their own honest assessment of their part in a problem, let's say you have a conflict with your current sweetie pie and there's something that doesn't go right and you both step back and you think, what is my part in this? And you both come back together and you're able to say, God, I'm so sorry because I did this and I'm sorry about this. And your partner says, and I'm really sorry about this because I did A, B, and C. That's beautiful. That's wonderful. That's exactly what you want in a relationship. So it's not that you want to change that pattern. That's a great thing that you're willing to do self-assessment. You just want to transform it so that it's not self-abuse or rubbing your nose in it as the way your old partner wanted to do. But instead, it's just, you understand, so it's a different context. Sometimes the things we do in one context are negative, but if we don't want to lose that ability, we just want to do it in a different context. For instance, I'm a very, very, very sensitive person, but I've learned that some people are not going to be kind to my sensitivity. I don't disclose a lot of things to people who I think are kind of prickly on the outside. I only disclose my intimate details about my sensitivity to people that I already know are going to embrace me and are kind to me. So I didn't lose my sensitivity. What I did was package it in a way so that it doesn't get hurt in certain positions or certain environments, whereas I can have it nurtured in others. Does that make sense?
It does, and well, that's great advice. I appreciate that. That the distinctions of self-searching and self-examination versus self-abuse. I think that's a very good, important distinction.
Yay! Thanks.
Thank you for calling, Chuck. Appreciate your listening.
All right, great show, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Again, this whole area of relationships, Deborah. is obviously nothing new, and I would even have to say that maybe even what you're talking about isn't anything new, but it's being reframed in a format that's more, shall we say, more contemporary, more, I'd even say even more marketable from that context. This is kind of like what you were talking about as far as the cover of the book, that it seems kind of odd, kind of strange, but people are going to be gravitating to it because of that, shall we say, oddity, and saying, oh, this is interesting, what's this about? And then they'll start flipping through it and realizing and learning from the 9 steps, the 9 steps that will help guide and get you over Mr. or Miss Wrong and move on to Mr. or Miss Right. And we certainly hope that you will avail yourselves of that by going to Dr. Debra Mandel's website. It is Debraonline.com. That's all one word. It's one of the things. Years ago, I received a record album with a bunch of sheets of paper in it from an individual, and all those papers had typing on them. And all the words were typed together, like one giant web address. So I guess I had my first introduction to that long before the Internet came along. But it is all one word, Debraonline.com. And you can check out her 3 books there, as well as other information, news, video items as well. You were on Bill O'Reilly's program, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that right?
I have been on Mr. O'Reilly's program several times, and in fact, actually, they call me lots and lots of times when I'm not able to make it. And it's so funny to me because he and I are probably on completely different ends of the spectrum. But I don't know why. The guy loves me. I mean, he always wants me on his show. It's very cute. But he's an interesting person.
He is indeed. Have you heard from Stephen Colbert?
No, I have not yet.
Well,
I'm hoping to, though.
He's the spoofing image of Bill O'Reilly, and I think that you two would probably have a lot of fun together in that regard. But you've also been on other television programs. As a matter of fact, you just returned, I believe it is, from an appearance that will be seen in late November on the Tyra Banks program.
Yes, and that was so great. And Tyra is a doll, so everybody who wants to know out there what Tyra's really like, she is a sweetheart. She is.
Well,
She's as sweet as can be.
I'll tell you, I have seen some of her programs, and indeed she is. We certainly hope that people will not only pick up copies of your book, but if they wanted to communicate with you directly, initially email style, how would they do that?
By going to that website, DRDEBRAonline.com, DrDebraOnline.com, and there's a way to contact me. And I try really hard to get to all the emails I get. Sometimes I can't, you know. So I want people to know that if you do contact me and I don't write back personally, it's just because I've been inundated or swamped, but I do read everything and try to sometimes, like I have a column also I write, Dear Dr. Debra column. I'll take people's questions and I might disguise them a little bit so I don't, disclose anybody's anonymity or anything like that, and I'll put them in a forum so those things get posted on my website as well so people can read about some of the things they might be interested in. Like one of the things I recently did was put up an article on the ways to find the best therapist for you, because that's something I get a lot of questions about. How do you know if it's a good therapist? How do you know if who you're finding is the right person for you? Because I've had people who have gone to 3, 5, 10 therapists before and they didn't get what they were looking for. So I did put an article up on my website which really addresses those issues of how to know whether you're seeking somebody with good realistic expectations of what they can help you with and how to go about that.
Well, certainly would encourage people, again, to go to DrDebraOnline.com and email her and let her know what's going on. And if she can respond to you, she certainly will, and we encourage you to do that. This interview will also be available at richarddugan.com. You can go to the schedules page and click on the link to the shows and listen to this program and other programs that we've had here on Tell Me Your Story throughout the last couple of months. And we will continue to do that. This program will be available literally moments after the program is done, and you'll be able to download it or just listen to it right on your computer or share it with friends and what have you. And that's encouraging to me because it means that the information that we are putting out there, Deborah, is being heard and being used by people.
Which is great.
I check the web stats on a regular basis, and I'm incredibly encouraged by the number of people that are going to the website and who are looking at the materials and then going on to, let's say, your website from mine, that we have a link to your site there at richarddugan.com, and they can can, again, take a look at all of the information that you have available and maybe even follow your tour through the media.
That's wonderful. And, I have a little bit of a tease here, and I'm not going to tell people what it's about.
Okay.
But there's actually, if you go to my website, I have a trailer of my new show that's going to be coming out as a webcast and then ideally on network. And it's called Coming In and Out. And if you go to my website, you can view the trailer and tell me what you think about it, because I think it's going to be a fantastic, new, and innovative program that people have not seen anywhere else.
Well, terrific, and we wish you much success with that.
Thanks.
Now, you have been in, as most of us have, in a number of relationships over the years that you have, from your teens on up. And as I said, as most of us have been, do you take much of your own personal history or your own personal life's lessons learned, or how do you incorporate that into, say, the clinical therapeutical education that you've received to help people?
If you take your hands and you put them together with your fingers connected, that's kind of my life. Okay, I take my personal life and my professional life and I weave those things together, and I try to present that in the most compassionate and the most hey, I'm a real person type thing as possible. So in my writings, in my work with people, I'm always interweaving what's happened in my life as well as professional knowledge and experience that I've had, because, I'm certainly not Miss Know-It-All. There's a lot out there that I need to keep learning. But my personal experiences have helped me, I believe, to be much more empathetic than I ever would have been had I not gone through the ringer on a lot of these things. So everything that I write about, there is a definite seed of my own life in it. And I'm not shy at all about disclosing that. You can even read that in my acknowledgments in the book and in my dedication. It's all out there. I am dedicating this book to all women out there who've been with chumps, because you know what? I've been with more than my share. And I keep learning. I'm not perfect in any way. I keep learning, and the advice that I impart to people, that's why I'm not that know-it-all person who says, you need to do A, B, and C. I just say, think about this. Think about this, because maybe it's going to help you get to a different level. And we all make mistakes. You know what? You could have learned all this stuff, and 20 years down the line, you say, oh, my God, I'm in a bad relationship again. Oy vey, what do I do? You say, okay, well, then I'm all about growth and healing and taking something when you realize it and running with it.
We'd like you to run with the book. If you'd like to, run to the bookstore and pick up a copy of Dump That Chump. Dr. Debra Mandel is my guest. And you and I, we've known each other for a number of years. We even have talked on so many different occasions.
You were one of my first interviews on my first book, Healing the Sensitive Heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember hearing on an audio tape of a therapist who was discussing the damage done, let's say, in a divorce, and who gets hurt worst. And he used this one example of the couple in therapy. They're actually at the attorney's office, and they're both sitting there, and the wife has been asked, well, what do you think is wrong? And she just goes off on the guy. And the guy is now shrinking in his chair. And the therapist says, stop. He says, will you look at what this guy is he's just capitulating and getting smaller and smaller in this big oversized chair. And the guy was basically saying that men get hurt worse in breakups or divorces than women do. Is that still pretty typical?
Let me say something about that, because it's, I'm always careful not to stereotype too much, because I've seen both men and women devastated by breakups. They didn't see it coming. They didn't know what was going on. But to play that part of stereotyping a little bit, this is what I'll say about the gender differences, is that oftentimes women spend a lot of time in the relationship already doing the grieving, because they don't let go right away. They spend a lot of time thinking about it and feeling the feelings of loss already. And so when they're actually in the breakup, they've already done half the work. And the guy is often blindsided, like, what are you talking about? What's going on? And so he has to do all that work afterward. And so that's why you often see a complete devastation in a guy. Also, it is true that men are often financially devastated after a divorce, because they often have to upkeep both two households. They may remarry and they still have to pay, if they've been married over 10 years, I think that's the law in California, that they have to sometimes pay lifetime support to their former spouse. So that can be a big crunch because guys often feel their emotions in their pocketbook more than in their hearts. Not true of all guys, by the way, so prove me wrong.
Well, actually, it sounds to me like what you're saying is that they both are injured, but it's more of timing, and it's offset.
Yes, that a lot of women see that it's going downhill. They're more aware of that because they're taking the temperature of the relationship ongoingly, whereas men, oftentimes, once they have the catch, they don't think about it so much, which is kind of sad because I think if men spent a little bit more time thinking about their relationship ongoingly, we'd have fewer divorces and separations because they would be doing something about the problems along the way. Women tend to be taught to be the housekeepers of the problems. So we will often be the ones who are constantly regulating and thinking about what's wrong in the relationship or what's wrong with our mate or what's wrong with ourselves, and constantly trying to fix it. And so we bear more of that burden usually. Stereotypically, again, that's not all women or all men, but we tend to be raised that way, and it may just be more in our nature as well. So I think it's important for men to be more thoughtful about the climate of the relationship ongoingly. You know what? Is this relationship fulfilling both of our needs? What do we need to do? Instead of just going out there and having affairs, instead, come back to the relationship and say, how can we make this better?
Yeah. Well, it sounds an awful lot like that one stereotypical attribute of men is they don't like to ask directions, they don't read the signs along the way, and before they know it, they're somewhere they didn't expect to be.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good point. Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's better from you than from me. That's good that you said that. You're the guy.
Yeah, send your cards and letters, too. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on our program today. It's been a pleasure having you back again, and we will talk to you in the near future when your new book about... Can
the chump actually change?
Can the chump change?
Yes.
There you go. Or you might actually put the chump change. And,
the chump change.
I like that.
I love it. Yeah.
I've just titled a book. Anyway.
That's right. In fact, I would love your listeners to write to me and tell me what they think about that. Let me know.
Great.
I can send that off to my publisher, and they'll be much more receptive if we get great feedback.
There you go. That's Debraonline.com, and go to her Contact Us or Contact Me link and email her and let her know what you think of that title. And again, Dr. Mandel, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the program. I'm Richard Dugan, and I hope you'll go to our website, richarddugan.com, and listen to the interview today with Dr. Mandel. And Doctor, I hope you'll stay with us for just a few moments after the program. And I hope that you will join us again next week here on Tell Me Your Story as we begin to continue to bring you new paradigms for a new world and a better world, your world and mine. I'm Richard Dugan. Love to Lao. Have a great day.